Welcome to Restaurant Influencers presented by Entrepreneur. My name is Sean Walchef, founder of Cali Barbecue and Cali Barbecue Media. In life, in the restaurant business, and in the new creator economy, we learn through lessons and stories. Today, I have a very special guest. We are on location in the Dog Patch neighborhood of San Francisco at Souvla with my man, Charles Bililies.
Way up.
Go, tell me what it is.
Bililies.
I butchered it.
That's a new one. I haven't gotten that one before.
We're not even gonna edit it out.
Years, man.
Bililies.
Bililies. Yes.
Okay, Bililies. See, this is barbecue media, so this is how the media sausage is made. I apologize. This is a man that's given me so much grace and hospitality, letting me come here, take over his restaurant on a Wednesday afternoon.
In the middle of lunch service.
In the middle of lunch service.
Yeah.
Charles, I'm grateful to have you here. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for your hospitality.
Sean, it is a pleasure to have you in the restaurant.
Please let me know where in the world is your favorite stadium, stage, or venue?
For obvious reasons, I'm very, very partial right now to the Chase Center, of which we are about a 10-minute walk away. We attend a lot of the Warriors games. We've all become basketball fans over here at Souvla. This particular restaurant we opened up in August, and one of the major highlights, aside from the fact that we really love the Dog Patch neighborhood, but it is a 10-minute walk to the Chase Center to go to a concert, to go to a Warriors game, and really like a go-to pro move is to come into Souvla. You know, game tip-offs at 6:30, come in around 5:30, get a great meal, glass of wine. 10 minutes, you're like in the stadium, door to door, like walking. The parking is a little bit easier out here, and the Chase Center itself is state of the art, it's brand new. It has amazing food and beverage opportunities, and it's just a great place to go see a show or a game or everything else.
So we think that the conference model in the hospitality space is broken, and we would love to see it disrupted. We would love to see people come and do better content, educational, inspiring content for the hospitality space. We're going to go to the Chase Center.
Great.
We're going to go talk to our team at Toast.
Great.
We're going to go talk to Entrepreneur. We're going to talk to some other sponsors, and we're going to rent out Chase Arena for all the people that are playing the game within the game.
That's
the
awesome.
Hospitality leaders that actually want to move their business forward, leverage things like the internet and storytelling to do what we do best. And I'm going to put you on center court. I'm going to say, Charles, I need the Souvla story.
Awesome.
Give me the Souvla story.
Oh yeah, well of course. So it's the Souvla story can be told in two parts, and I would clarify and say it's two sort of parallel stories. There's the product, and there's the format. Because both of those things, coming up on now 9 years, but 9 years ago and even longer, didn't really exist back then. So on the product side, we set out to modernize or reinvent what is classically known as the gyro or Souvla cuisine. And that was born not only out of my own Greek heritage, being Greek, my parents sort of both sides, born in the U.S., and so Souvla is a little bit of a representation of my, at times, conflicted relationship with my heritage, right? Being American-born to Greek parents, but raised in sort of a generation of people where everyone really was trying to sort of lean into the sort of American notion. And this has sort of evolved as of late, where everyone's trying to kind of do the opposite and like learn 6 languages and do all those things. So on the product side, it really came out of about now 13 years ago, a backyard barbecue that I had at a place I was living in San Francisco with my roommate. We had a backyard, which is rare in the city. We roasted a whole lamb, and we just threw like a big barbecue party. You know, roasting a whole lamb is a very traditional practice in the Greek faith and the Greek culture. It's usually done every Easter to sort of celebrate the end of the fast and all that fun stuff. So that in and of itself is just like a ritual and a tradition that I grew up with and kind of wanted to reinvigorate in my own life. And so we had this great party. We had a bunch of people over, and we did the whole lamb thing. And of course, there's a very primal experience to being next to a whole animal that's being roasted over open fire. So obviously everyone was really, really attracted to that. We had this great party, and the following day I was cleaning up, and we had a bunch of leftover picked lamb meat. Someone had brought a beautiful heirloom tomato salad. Someone had brought pita bread. It was a kind of a potluck thing, and I made myself this leftover sandwich with whole roasted, beautiful lamb, fresh organic produce, warm fluffy pita, feta cheese, and sort of the light bulb one. And it's like, wow. I was like, no one. This is at a time, again, 13 years ago, when every other sort of cultural sort of street or comfort food was getting reinvented, was getting the chef treatment. Think about, again, we're going back now, but like, think about what the hamburger or the cheeseburger was to what it sort of became.
Yes.
Right? Think about what the taco was and then what it sort of became. All of those really classic staple foods. And the gyro really hadn't been disrupted since it came to the U.S. in the 70s, and it was always perceived as this sort of mystery cone meat, kind of this drunk late night food, this highly processed product with this really, out of season mealy tomatoes, and like you got out of a questionable cart or store or whatever it was. And so no one had really taken this sort of more kind of California approach with like, okay, let's rethink what's going into this, because the architecture of that sandwich is amazing, right? Warm, fluffy pita, cool yogurt, hot meat, fresh veggies, Greek cheese. So that sort of started the wheels on the product side. And then on the format side, what was really interesting is most of my career has been in fine dining, whether that's in the kitchens, in the dining rooms, in the back offices. I had the great privilege to work for chefs like Thomas Keller and Michael Mina in various of their, a lot of their restaurants. And so I had most of my sort of training came from that side. I was, a culinary degree, have a hospitality degree, but, was always sort of operating in restaurants at that sort of Michelin star, full service caliber. And what was really interesting, sort of by the end of my journey, I started to get more exposed into the business side of things, start to write, pro formas and budgets and do P&L reviews. And I got more exposed to the business model of fine dining restaurants. And the business model of fine dining restaurants is, I will say, broken. Despite the fact that, you're charging hundreds of dollars for these tasting menus and these incredible experiences, it costs a tremendous amount of money to build these restaurants, to staff these restaurants, to create everything that the guest experiences. And so it started with the sandwich, it started with the product, and then when the wheels were turning, it was a little bit of like, okay, how can I leverage my fine dining background and bring it together with this product and do it in a way that is economically viable. San Francisco is, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point, one of the most expensive cities in America, if not the most expensive city in America. Also one of the most expensive and one of the most challenging cities to operate any small business, let alone a restaurant. And so going into this, obviously, as a first-time operator, entrepreneur, you obviously have to balance the product, the experience with the more rational sort of fundamentals, like, is this a viable business model? And so that's kind of how things started. And so when you look around our restaurants, even though you are ordering from a counter, the restaurants themselves look, act, and feel like full-service restaurants. So here we are drinking wine out of a stem wine glass, right? Food is delivered to your table is bussed. You're not carting around your trays looking for the trash can. We spend a tremendous amount of time and energy in the design and ambiance and experience of our restaurants. We want them, and they are verified, nice enough to bring a date. So over the years, we've actually catered several weddings because people either went on their first date at Souvla, met in line at Souvla. We catered a wedding where the couple met in line. We've actually also had, it was very sweet, during the dark days of COVID when the restaurant was closed, we actually had our very first proposal at Souvla.
Oh, wow.
So the brand itself has become a part of the cultural fabric of the city of San Francisco in a way that I had never imagined. And so what's really, really great, we're coming up on 9 years next month, and we continue to iterate and to refine who we are, what we do, and how we do it. And the brand has evolved over the years. customers. Because really what it comes down to is we want to be many things to many people. We want to be able to deliver our product in the most efficient way, in the most consistent way possible. We're incredibly fortunate to have a very, very loyal following, and we want to continue to support them. And that comes down to iterating on things like our tech stack. That comes down to being incredibly thoughtful and borderline sort of surgical as far as like where we open the next Souvla. Obviously delivering extraordinary service, whether that's in the restaurant or online or in any of those ways. And so that really is kind of probably the shortest version of the Souvla story that I've told to date.
Well, I appreciate it for giving the context, and for me, I never met my father. I was raised by my Bulgarian grandfather, and his girlfriend was Japanese.
Wow.
So my grandmother was Japanese, my grandfather was Bulgarian. So
Yeah.
I ate Bulgarian food and Japanese food all the time. But I remember that at certain points growing up in my childhood, I was almost embarrassed of the fact when I would have friends over that we were eating Bulgarian food or having Japanese food. And now, as I have kids, I actually married a Bulgarian woman. So my children are more Bulgarian than I am.
Yeah.
But now I'm at a point where we're starting to explore the Bulgarian cuisine and celebrating it. For you, when you look back at your heritage,
Yes.
what was the change? Like, where was the change of looking at something and then wanting to embrace something that actually became the core of your business? The identity part.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting because I went through probably a very, very similar journey to you in that I was raised by Greek parents. My mother came to the U.S. When she was in high school. My father was born in the U.S. But there was very much, I think, at the time, the immigrant mentality around raising a family and wanting the children to be sort of quote unquote normal American kids. And so we grew up with a lot of the cultural traditions of Greece. We grew up in the Orthodox Church. So a lot, and certainly in Greece, probably similar to Bulgaria, a lot of that stuff is actually pretty interwoven. And like most of those cultures, food becomes a very, very central part of everything. So my family upbringing was interesting because it was very, very food centric. But also, like, I didn't grow up speaking the language. Here I am at age 40, back in Greek school.
Are you really?
I am. Yeah.
Good for you.
My rhythm and my pronunciation of the language is actually pretty excellent.
As bad as mine.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, back then,
someone that's Bulgarian did it. No one's butchered your name as bad as me.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay. It happens.
We all make mistakes. You're in the restaurant business.
That's right. It's all about the recovery, right?
Correct.
Huge news. Toast, our primary technology partner at our barbecue restaurants in San Diego, and the primary technology partner of so many of the guests that we have on this show, have announced they are expanding their business offerings with Google. So now, if you search on Google Maps and you sign up for Toast Tables or Toast Waitlist, you will have the opportunity to improve the digital hospitality experience of the guest, allow them to book through the maps into the Toast reservation system. One of the biggest difficulties that restaurant guests have is when they search for your restaurant and they want a table, they do not have an easy solution to book a table or to get on a wait list. Toast has just announced that they are expanding their offerings with Google, and they now have introduced Toast Tables and Toast Reservations. This is huge news for the restaurant industry, huge news for guests, and huge news for you, the restaurant owner. Check out Toast Tables today and find out the new integrated solution that they have. This is something that we've wanted for a long time. How do you integrate reservations, wait lists into your point of sale? Toast has done it. Check it out.
No, so it was interesting because it was this hybrid situation where obviously all of the holidays and the feast days were very, very sort of centered around Greek food. Both of my grandparents on both sides, both my grandfathers, I should say, on both sides were extraordinary cooks. One of them did it professionally, had restaurants, and ended up teaching later in life. And the other one was just one of those sort of savant sort of type cooks, a guy that came in from Greece, never had Chinese food in his life. got it takeout once, and then the next day is in there figuring out how to make, and nailing it. So I think what was interesting, I went on this very sort of roundabout journey that sort of ended up sort of bringing me back to my Greek roots. And really one of the big things around that we really try to emphasize at Souvla is obviously very Greek, as you can sort of see by the surroundings. We have the country's only all Greek beverage list down to the sparkling water.
Wow, really?
And we have our own line of Greek wines. We work with 3 different producers in Greece to produce 4 different wines under the Souvla label. But I wanted Souvla to be really approachable. At the end of the day, there in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's not the same sort of level of a Greek population that you might see in a city like Boston or Chicago or New York. If you look around this restaurant, I guarantee you I'm the only Greek person in here.
Probably.
But so often is the case with restaurants that feature cuisines of other countries where they sort of, and maybe as they should, over-index on being very, very traditional. And so you get into a situation where people become a little nervous around how to pronounce something.
Yes.
My name. What these dishes mean, what these words mean, like what is this? And so I wanted Souvla to be really, really approachable, and so people felt comfortable coming into the restaurant, felt comfortable ordering, felt comfortable with all those things. So the menu itself is very simple, very streamlined, and brings together, the sort of the California sort of ethos in terms of the quality of the product, organic produce, naturally raised meats, things along those lines, and then blending in a lot of the Greek tradition and or Greek inspiration. So this restaurant is our first that actually has both the classic Souvla menu and a little bit more of a traditional sort of Greek meze menu. So you can actually kind of do a little bit of both. But, certainly in the early days, people saw the Souvla menu and they're like, well, this isn't Greek. And it's like, well, I mean, some of the things definitely are, and some of the things we've taken a lot of inspiration with, And so, and that was really, really important to me to sort of redefine the product and then also redefine the format. So Souvla is, if not the first, certainly, and I guess maybe that could be debatable, but I position it as that we have sort of created the fast fine format, this sort of elevated version of the fast casual space that not only allows people to, enjoy the cuisine and the wine, in the restaurant, but also take it to go, have it delivered, order online, but then also not feel again like that you are in a restaurant. Like this is a restaurant, right? It's like, I guarantee you, like you would take your wife here, like for dinner. People see, the counter service.
Are you in San Diego? We could use one in our neighborhood.
People see the counter, and they kind of sometimes convert. It's like, oh, this is just like a quick service or fast casual restaurant. But then when you start to see the rest of it, certainly when you come into this same restaurant at night, the lights are down, there's candles on the table, everyone's drinking wine, and so my earlier point, it looks and acts and feels like a full service restaurant. And so that's really what allows us to sort of stand out. And also I feel very strongly back then when we opened in 2014, just as much as, today, this is very much how people want to eat. You want to have the freedom and flexibility to come in whenever you want to come in and not have to worry about making reservations, not have to worry about putting on a, jacket or whatever, but then also like, you know what, to your earlier conversation, like we're going to just take this to go.
Yeah.
Great. No problem. And or it's like, oh, we got to go to the Warriors game.
Yeah.
Up and out. You don't have to wait for the check.
Yes.
And do that stuff. And or again, a first date, a meet up with a friend or whatever, it's a very approachable price point, and you can make it a quick snack, a glass of wine, or like a full on, team dinner, and everything in between. And interestingly enough, our sales actually skew more towards dinner than they do lunch.
Interesting.
And it was also a very, very important thing for me, more on a personal sort of selfish level. Being in the industry for as long as I have, often find myself eating at odd hours. So like lunchtime is oftentimes like 3 p.m. Try going out to a restaurant at 3 p.m. Most places do, 11 to 2 and then 5 to 10.
Correct. Or you'll get the worst service.
Or you get the worst service where all the Souvlas are open 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Wow.
And open and serving.
So as somebody that went to culinary school and hospitality school at Cornell, you were trained by Thomas Keller, by Michael Mina. You're essentially a savant in the hospitality space, but still, this is a show for entrepreneur.
Sure.
You still had to get to the point where you have to bet on yourself.
100%.
Bring me back to the business plan.
Yes.
Did you shoot too small or did you shoot too big? Looking back at what you've created now.
Yeah.
And that first, once you were ready to show that to the initial investors.
Sure.
Did you aim too high or did you aim too low?
The short answer is I aim too low. And I guess it's an important caveat for our conversation to just highlight the fact that I actually am the child of two entrepreneurs. So neither of them in the hospitality space, but both of my parents ran their businesses out of the house that I grew up in, and so I, from birth, had front row seats to what that struggle is like, to what level of hustle is needed, the sacrifice that is needed, and all of those things. So you could probably say that there is something that the sort of the entrepreneurialism sort of runs in my blood. And it was very, very interesting. It was a very, very sort of poignant sort of moment, in a very similar sort of setting, two different points of time in having the conversation with my parents saying that, hey, I wanted to drop out of regular sort of four-year university and go to culinary school. It's kind of a shock to them at the time. And then fast forward years later, hey, I'm going to resign my nice manager job working for the Mina Group and go start my own thing. And it was equal, and the reception was equal parts shock and support. And I remember very, very vividly having a conversation with my father about this when I told him about the idea for Souvla and what I wanted to do. And he's like, why would you leave this job? You make a nice salary, you have healthcare, all of these benefits. And I was like, 20 years ago, you did the exact same thing. You left your teaching job that you hated, that drove you nuts, that you made terrible money in, and you went and started your own company, and look at where you are today. It's like I want to do that. It just took me 10 plus years to figure out what the thing was. And so anyways, to your real question, it took me a full 2 years just to raise the money. It took another 2 years prior to that to write and rewrite the business plan. And so it was a big struggle.
How big was the business plan for? Was it for one restaurant or for multiple? Was it for a brand?
It was for one restaurant, but the intent was to scale it. But the fundraise and the investment was in that one restaurant, in that one physical space.
Yep.
And that was kind of it. And at some point, when you're in town, I'll take you to the original Souvla. We wouldn't be able to film in it because it's too small. It's 1,000 square feet on the ground.
That's amazing.
And the way that it pro forma'd, it was a very, very conservative pro forma. It was a very, very small and very scrappy raise. And that business has returned capital to the original investor group at the 7x return right now we're kind of looking at, and does about 6 times the revenue that we thought it was going to do. So it was a little bit of and it's still the little restaurant that could, even all these years later. So and it's always fun to go back and be in that restaurant because it's the place that we made all of our mistakes at.
Yep.
And quite frankly, we still make mistakes, but we continue to grow and evolve and learn from them. And it is really, really interesting to see, what one small restaurant is capable of. They're, my wife and I don't have kids. These restaurants are effectively my kids. They are, they take about 9 months to sort of sometimes we have one right now that's coming up on 2 years, so it's a little, it's a longer process.
Yes.
But they can be very traumatic, very, very, very problematic, very expensive.
Yes.
And they do need to learn how to walk and then how to run and all these other things. But looking back, it's really amazing what these restaurants have been able to do, and also just how much value and just how much a part of people's lives they've become.
Can you talk about brand? I know brand is important to you. It's important to me. We talk about it on the show all the time. You and I shared a conversation in Boston at the Toast Customer Advisory Board about Delta.
Yes.
How much you respected Delta. Can you talk about the opportunity that you have? And it's so important for restaurant owners to think differently. I think that's why we get along. That's why I love the people that watch this show and listen to this show, because we're all trying to be better and leverage this amazing thing called the internet to build more profitable businesses and do cooler stuff, to impact more communities, and to really have fun doing what we do. This is a hard business to be in, but there are people out there like yourself that are doing incredible things. Tell me about the Delta story.
The Delta story was a pretty remarkable one. Full disclosure, I'm a huge Delta fan personally. Have been for probably the last 5-6 years. I've made it a priority of mine to sort of achieve kind of all of the fun unlocks that come with the Delta SkyMiles program. So I get to enjoy all of the perks of being a Diamond Medallion sort of member. And we have spent a lot of time on Delta planes, especially years back when we were kind of back and forth between San Francisco and New York for my wife's restaurant. And there are very, very few brands. Certainly Souvla is a very, very brand-centric restaurant.
Yeah.
And it was important to me in the early days in creating the Souvla brand that was about the brand and not about the individual. I had spent my career working for chefs that named their brands after themselves. It's a very sort of traditional thing to do in the sort of the male-dominated sort of chef world. You name the restaurant after yourself and all the other things. And in thinking about Souvla, I wanted Souvla to be about Souvla. I wanted it to be about the brand. I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want it to be about Tony, who's our chef and my partner in the business. I didn't want to create this sort of false expectation that we're always in the restaurant, that I'm going to be pouring you wine or Tony's going to be making you your sandwich.
Yes.
Tony is actually in the kitchen here today.
That's fantastic.
So just by coincidence, we have 4 other restaurants that are running that he's not in right now. So and so with that, I've been incredibly protective about the brand. There's no one else from the outside that owns any part of the IP or any of that part. That was really important to me to keep that separate from the restaurants. And again, we're incredibly thoughtful about who we align ourselves with, who we partner with. So to answer your question about the Delta story, Delta came to us, which was quite remarkable, and it was really...
Was it an email? Was it a DM?
It was an email, like so many things.
Did they just show up at your door?
Two of the no, it's not like
what should I look for?
No. Two of the more remarkable Souvla stories was the Delta opportunity and the time that we fed Michelle Obama, and both of those times it came in through a very, very sort of vague generic email into the hello@souvla.com email address, which I still monitor.
Yeah.
And because you never know when
that's the brand. You don't know. If there's a reason to check your email, there you go. There's the story you need.
Exactly.
Delta or Michelle Obama might be on the other one.
Right. You never know.
You never know.
And so it was interesting. Delta was this was in the summer of 2021. So we're still kind of mid pandemic at that time. Delta had throughout COVID suspended all of its hot food programs, for the obvious reasons, and were looking to reboot their hot food programs, and they were looking for a restaurant partner out of San Francisco. And so that team started to kind of put out feelers to people that they knew in the area that either lived or worked or just, they have obviously it's the largest airline in the world. They have quite a presence and obviously a very, very big team. And the way that it was told to me, Souvla kind of kept on coming back. It was when they sort of cast the net out.
Oh, wow.
Multiple pings came back. It's you should talk to Souvla, you should talk to Souvla. Now, mind you, obviously, we're not, as much as I love Delta and I fly on planes, we we don't have an airline background. You know, this is not.
It's a different hospitality business. We're all the same, but it's a lot different.
Exactly. Just because we cook food doesn't mean that we know how to put it onto an airplane. And we're also like we're in the restaurant business. We're not food manufacturers.
Yes.
You know, which is what we ultimately became. And so either way, it was they reached out and they said, "Hey, listen, we'd like to talk to you. We are relaunching our hot food program in the fall. We are interested in you being one of our West Coast launch partners for this relaunch." And so it ended up being ourselves out of San Francisco, John and Vinny out of LA, amazing restaurant group, and then Danny Meyer's Views Were Events.
Oh wow!
Out of New York. That was sort of like the big three for
good company.
Amazing company to be in.
No pressure.
Danny's
either. Great company to be in, but no pressure.
Danny's a friend and has dined at Souvla many times and is just a great sort of mentor and
awesome.
and advisor and supporter. So we're all big USHC fans over here as well. And so it was really interesting because now we had this opportunity. You know, sales were still kind of depressed. We're still operating under these kind of funny conditions. We were actively trying to sort of diversify our portfolio and figure out how we could leverage our team and leverage our production facility to do other things. And so we tasked ourselves with like figuring out how to put Souvla in the air. And not only in the air, but breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Ooh.
So multiple offerings, multiple meal periods.
How many meals per day?
I think at peak, we were probably running about 15,000 meals a month. So, probably like 500-600 a day. And also, mind you, unlike restaurants, planes run all the time.
They're always running.
They're always running. So the days that we normally get to enjoy holiday closures, things like that, we have an obligation to be producing meals.
Correct.
So that was another sort of
peak travel times, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we normally like to close the restaurants for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and usually a day on either side, and we're in there, doing all that stuff. So. It was a really amazing challenge. It was the first time in history that Greek cuisine had been featured on a major domestic carrier ever, and it also gave us a lot of opportunity to think a little bit outside of the Souvla box in terms of our core classic menu and come up with other Greek or Greek-inspired dishes. Obviously, our restaurants don't serve breakfast. We had to develop a breakfast menu.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that was probably the most impressive, and I was very, very fortunate to sit up front in those planes for several times for R&D purposes. But we were flying our frozen Greek yogurt, and so when you think about enjoying a frozen yogurt at 35,000 feet, and also what it took to get it there, and on top of it, the fact that it actually was really, really good, like it actually was still like perfectly tempered. Like it wasn't this like melted puddle or any of those things. That was really, really remarkable. And so, I think it really comes down to, aligning ourselves with the right brands. It's not only, about, shared values, but also about, again, how the brand is perceived. Do we want to be associated with them or not? And so, just as much as Delta is the official airline of Souvla, has had the great privilege of being a partner to Delta, and the even sort of better, the sort of like the proverbial cherry on the sundae or the frozen Greek yogurt. My wife is in the wine business, and she launched a women-made sparkling wine brand called Unfem. Today, Unfem is the global partner to Delta.
Wow.
The official sparkling wine on every single Delta plane in the world.
Wow. And
in every single Sky Club.
That's amazing. So
you want to talk about a story and just this sort of meteoric rise because the company is only 2 years old. So to go from, a relatively small annual production to a very, very meaningful annual production is quite remarkable.
What's the social handle for your wife's company?
Unfem Wines.
Unfem Wines. We'll put a link in the show notes. That's absolutely what an incredible story.
Yeah, really remarkable.
That is very cool. So On the show, obviously, Toast is our title sponsor. You and I met at Toast headquarters in Boston.
Yes.
You are a technology-first restaurant. Tell me, why did you switch from Square to Toast?
Great question. So yes, we are a technology-first restaurant. We have been, since our inception 9 years ago, I have made it a priority to build the organization on the latest generation sort of tech stack. Back in the restaurants are sort of famously pretty analog, and even the restaurants that I worked in previous were still on legacy systems and still emailing Excel spreadsheets around and all of those things. And I was like, there has to be a better way. 2014, let's figure out the next sort of generation. And so Square was a very early partner of ours. Their headquarters was literally down the street. We fed more Square employees than probably Square fed. We had a level of access because we were so early on in that company's lifespan, and obviously with ours as well. I was a sort of unofficial spokesperson for the brand. We probably beta tested and broke probably every piece of Square hardware and software that existed, and also just enjoyed a level of access into that company that most restaurants didn't have the privilege because, again, of the proximity. And also just my nature in terms of really, really pushing the envelope as far as, what we needed as a sort of a next generation sort of future leading restaurant. And so we had a great partnership with them for, some 7 years or so. And I think really what it came down to is again, further integration. And just getting all of these systems to talk to each other. We also were hearing a lot of feedback from our guests in terms of functionality that they wanted, in terms of things around scheduled orders and all of those type of that kind of flexibility. And then you sort of layer into that just the overall reliability that we needed. These are high volume restaurants. We have a tendency, as I made mention, to break all kinds of things.
Yes.
And the volume is one of those things that just has a tendency to break stuff. And so it gets harder when you're operating restaurants that are a little bit of an outlier as a client, where it's we're giving this feedback where it's this is not working, this is melting down, and it's well, we're not hearing this from anyone else. It's well, you probably don't have anyone else that's
speaking up.
It's either speaking up, or you might not have anyone else that's doing the volume that we're doing. An average Souvla serves between 700 and 1,000 people a day.
It's amazing,
right? So that's a lot of throughput.
Yes,
and so when I started my conversations with Toast, I started with Matt Kaplan at the very sort of top, and was pretty transparent in terms of what we needed and what we weren't really getting. And all of those assurances. And I think it's also one of the things, too, I was thinking about this earlier before you came, around you have to make decisions around, do you want to work with generalists or do you want to work with specialists? And there are pros and cons to both of those things. And you mentioned, the conference that you're speaking at later, that's I think an example of a brand that is a generalist.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that it's a knock on them. It's just there's a huge pro in that you can kind of have everything live under one roof. But I kind of associate generalists as sort of, I'm a big car guy, so I associate generalists a little bit it's the all season tire. You do a lot of things, right? You can drive in the snow and the rain, whatever. Really well.
You don't want them in the rain.
You're driving fast on a racetrack. You want a summer performance tire. Yeah. You're going up in the snow. You want a studded winter tire. And so we've really reinvented the entire Souvla tech stack. And that's, again, it's evolved over the years, but really focusing on working with sort of best in category specialists. And so the drawback to that is you got to get them to talk to each other.
Yes.
And so we've been really happy with Toast with a lot of their functionality because we're able to plug in some of these external partners and have everything flowing on the same set of rails.
Yeah, for me, it's just fascinating to see where we are in 2023, knowing how fast it's going to change just by 2024, 2025.
Right.
What is Souvla going to look like, and what's the customer going to want? So much of the conversations that we have with all of our technology partners is we understand that you might perceive us to be the client,
right?
But ultimately the customer is the client. So I really don't care what it is, as long as it makes it easier for every guest in here to get what they want. And like you said earlier, every guest in here might want something different.
Totally.
That's why you had delivery drivers. That's why you had people that were ordering in line waiting when I got here.
Yes.
That's why you had people on a business lunch. You had other people that were just here to enjoy like a glass of wine. We don't know, but we need the technology that's going to provide what we call digital hospitality.
100%. And I think the challenge, and it's continuing to evolve, but because I think the customer is continuing to get more and more savvy and more understanding. To your point about the customer being the client, when you're working with technology partners, especially when you're working with a Toast, when you're working with a DoorDash, when you're those things. At the end of the day, it's about the guests, right? And it's about getting them whatever that they want and having that functionality. And the guest doesn't oftentimes understand, or quite frankly care, nor should they, that like the POS is not working right now, or the delivery driver got lost on the way to their house, or whatever it is. They just immediately they go to the restaurant. Hey, Souvla, why? What happened? Like, what is this thing? And it's like, and obviously from our end, we obviously want to be empathetic. We obviously want to be able to sort of recover the situation. We can't necessarily just say, oh, it's so-and-so's fault, that this thing broke or whatever it is. We have to figure out a way to fix it and make it right, because ultimately, like, that's what the guest expects and demands, and they don't necessarily want to hear that it's, someone else's fault.
So can you talk to the restaurant owner that's listening to this show or watching this? Why is it important to speak up on behalf of problems that happen? Because I think when I talk to restaurant owners, some of the biggest complaints that I hear is that nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell them is that you need to find partners that listen to you the same way you listen to your guests.
Yes. Yeah, I think a couple things. Number one, obviously, yes, speak up. Number two, just know that all of this stuff takes time.
Yes.
Right? We as restaurateurs and chefs and operators, we have the ability to like pivot on a moment's notice and fix something like immediately.
Correct.
This wine is too warm. Let me get you another bottle of wine.
Correct.
Right?
Good point.
When you're working with technology companies or any external partner that's not in the restaurant space, they don't generally work that way, right? And in general, the larger the company that you are working with, the longer things take to get fixed.
Correct.
The more layers of whether it's bureaucracy or management or whatever needs to happen to get the change. It takes time. I've gotten a little bit better. With the phrase, but for the longest time, certainly in like periods of challenges that we've had with our tech partners, with this notion of like, oh, it's on our roadmap. It's just like, I don't want to hear that. It's on the road. No, it's a very, very common phrase in the tech world. Restaurants don't have roadmaps.
Or today. I have a today map.
Like now,
I don't have a roadmap.
Right.
Today
The roadmap is about right
now map.
Right. So like having the sort of patience to kind of work through with that, I think is just at least having that understanding that like not everything is going to happen immediately, unfortunately. That's a hard thing to. I think obviously whenever you have the opportunity to work with external partners that have an understanding and/or I think honestly more importantly experience in the restaurant industry, that's helpful because there's a little bit more of an understanding, a little more of an empathy around what's gone on. We've had employees, we've had like heads of product and people like that. We've brought them in and made them work in our restaurants. This is in the early days where things were still sort of developing, but like to get them to understand either the functionality that we're missing or the problem that we were having with the hardware or the software, and the impact that it has not only on the guest, right, but the impact that it has on the individual providing the service.
Yes.
Right. When you're working behind the point of sale, and all of a sudden the point of sale freezes or crashes or whatever, and you've got a line of people out the door.
Yeah.
How do you handle that situation? What do you do?
Yeah.
And it's easier for the when you're dealing with a product manager or whatever in an office, they don't have that
anxiety. They've never been sitting
exactly.
Sitting in front.
So it was amazing to like bring in these heads of product and make them do that, and then watching their face when it happens and be like, oh, So now you understand. When the kitchen printer malfunctions and doesn't send a signal to the point of sale that the kitchen printer is not working, and then all of a sudden you're looking around the dining room and there's a sea of people holding numbers, looking really, really upset. And all of a sudden you look back in the kitchen and there's no tickets on the kitchen rail. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yes.
So that's really, really, so that's important. Certainly, one of many reasons why I love Toast. Not that we're making this, I know that they're a sponsor, but this is the truth.
They're a sponsor for a reason. I mean, I don't hide the fact that Toast.
You're wearing the Toast hat. It's
I made my own
one
Toast
of one.
I made my own Toast hat.
No, I love the fact that Toast was started by people that came from restaurants.
Yes.
And so that owned and operated and had experience in restaurants, because having that level of understanding, being able to speak the language, and then also just like understanding it from the operator's point of view is, unlike most tech companies, it for me is very, very important.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, the last thing too, and this may sort of be seen, maybe this is a Souvla anomaly, and I don't really want to set a precedent, but we have standing weekly calls with a lot of our tech partners.
You've earned those calls.
We've earned those calls. It was when we switched over. It was on my list of demands from Toast.
I mean, that's one of the most important lessons that I think. That's why we do this show.
Right.
It's so important for restaurant owners to know that you're not alone. We feel like we're alone. We feel like we have to fight the fights. But what you've done is you've created a culture with your partners to know you're not just a squeaky wheel.
Right.
You're willing to work. You're willing to test. You're willing to meet with. You go above and beyond for them to help them make better products, not just for Souvla.
Right.
For literally any other restaurant that they roll out those products to.
Right. Yeah, and that's how we always position the brand, and it's always done in the spirit of self-improvement, right?
Yes.
So we obviously want to make Souvla better, but we also want to make whatever the product of our partner better.
Yeah.
We want the functionality, the reliability, all of those things. So that's why and we've gotten a little bit more selective over the years, but in the early days we would beta test an awful lot of stuff. We're very fortunate to be in San Francisco and in sort of the broader Bay Area, where so many of these companies are actually headquartered. So we get a level of exposure to new technology and just overall deal flow that maybe other brands might not, operating in other parts of the country. So and so often is the case that things that sort of start here in the Bay Area gradually make their way.
Yes.
Just even down to on our end from an innovation standpoint. We're now seeing the Souvla of so many other types of foods, which to me is just amazing to see, because I've been very, very vocal about the format and to my earlier point about this is how people want to dine, and so I don't see it as a threat. I see it as actually as a good thing, and if anything, it's like from our end, we have to continue to sort of evolve and iterate. If we're going to continue to, if we've created the category and lead the category, we have to keep on leading the category for years to come.
Love it. So every single week on Wednesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the social audio app Clubhouse, we have an incredible community of digital hospitality leaders, restaurant owners, marketers, sales professionals that join us. It's a free call. It's a free app. Join the app. We also want to do a shout out. Right now, I'm actually looking for a restaurant influencer. So if you know somebody on YouTube, a restaurant owner that's doing something unique, they're adding something that's different for the restaurant industry, they're building a community on there, please let me know. You can email me, Shawn, SHAWN, at calibbq.media. You can find me on social platforms at Shawn P. Walchef, SHAWN P WALCHEF. Charles, what's the best way for people to come and enjoy Souvla or get in touch with you?
Best way is definitely go to our website, souvla.com. I think, as I disclosed earlier, all the hello emails, I always see. And all of our social handles are just at Souvla.
Okay.
SOUVLA. So
And
Instagram, Twitter.
Any parting words of wisdom for the restaurant industry, a restaurant owner that's listening to this show?
I do have parting words of wisdom, and it's and I think it really dovetails nicely into the fact that we're doing this for Entrepreneur Magazine. And I, full disclosure, I don't know where I read this, and I cannot take credit for this phrase, but it's something that I heard many years ago, and has resonated with me, and is certainly now sort of resonating a little bit more with me as I'm 9 years into my journey here with Souvla, and as I made mentioned earlier, just growing up in a household of entrepreneurs and sort of like watching both of my parents' businesses, grow and flourish and struggle and everything else. But entrepreneurialism is spending a few years of your life living like most people won't, so you can spend the rest of your life living like most people can't.
Wow.
It's a really, really powerful phrase, and it's something where it's like, and listen, in the early days of Souvla, in the years leading up to the restaurant, and even in the first few years of the restaurant, the amount of sacrifice and work and struggle and stress and rejection and everything else that I have experienced is truly extraordinary. We need a whole nother episode to kind of like unpack that.
We'll come back.
You can be my therapist, I guess.
No problem.
But I mean, and here we are now. Nearly 9 years later, you and I are able to have this conversation in one of 5 restaurants, and I haven't had to get up and do anything, I guess, or like look at my phone or any of those things. And so I feel, and this is very much a shout out to them. I am incredibly fortunate to have an extraordinary team of people behind Souvla and behind
Can
me.
you give me one shout out? Give me one person. I love the question because it's impossible. When somebody leads an organization, it's hard to pick one person, but it's going to be an entrepreneur, at least somebody that's gone above and beyond.
Totally. I will shout out 2 people. Ross Wunderlich and Juliana Fernandez, who are our 2 senior operations managers. Ross sort of more on the culinary side, Juliana on sort of the dining room, sort of guest-facing side. Both of these people have been with the organization for 7 years. In Juliana's case, 8 years.
Wow.
Juliana started with me as a counter server in the original restaurant shortly after we opened. He is now leads all of our operations. Both of them. Ross started as a kitchen manager in our second restaurant. So they are the ones that are mentoring and empowering our teams and developing, and have developed now generations of Souvla managers and supervisors, and they are very much the unsung heroes, and it's really just a testament to, and quite frankly, both of them run our restaurants better than I ever could. So it's like you also kind of have to have the wherewithal to be like, okay, I'm gonna get out of, like, my job right now is really not only is it of course like on the sort of development strategy side, but day to day tactically, operationally, my job is to get out of everyone's way, right? Because I have a team of absolutely extraordinary, talented people. And all of our, and we have a full-time controller. She leads all of our financial stuff. We have a full-time head of HR. They lead all of our sort of people ops stuff. And the operations team has sort of grown from there. But my job is to just kind of like set the tone and set the direction and let them go. Because quite frankly, they're better than I am. And they are, to our conversation about being specialists, they have grown and evolved and become specialists in these fields.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I hope that this show inspires other owners to build their team so that eventually one day on a Wednesday afternoon they can do a cool interview for Entrepreneur. Thank you to Toast for believing in this project. Like I said,
Thank you to Toast for powering our restaurants.
Absolutely, for powering our restaurants. But like for me, as a barbecue restaurant owner, if I didn't have a team down there, if I didn't have this crew out here in San Francisco, Rising Tides Creative, Stover, who produces the show, and most importantly, the audience. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for believing in it. We want to do cool, more in-person interviews, not just digital interviews. So we want to go all over the world and find the other Charleses that are reshaping communities and doing really cool stuff. Charles, I can't wait to see what you continue to build, and we're here to support you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for listening to Restaurant Influencers. The best way that you can help us with the show is to subscribe and write a review. We love the opportunity to connect with you, no matter where you are on the globe, no matter what restaurant you are running. Please send us a DM on social at Sean P. Walchef. If you are interested in Toast, if you want to improve your digital hospitality, please send me a DM. I will get you in touch with a local Toast representative. We appreciate you listening to this show. The best way that you can help this show is share it with a friend, and we will catch you all next week, or we will see you on one of the digital playgrounds that we call social media.